Either you're terminated today, or you accept a salary of $20,000 a year. Blake Rourke didn't lean forward when he said it. He didn't explain. He just let the sentence sit there, like the decision had already been made somewhere I wasn't invited. The folder stopped at the edge of the table. My name was printed on the tab. Dana Lynn from HR sat across from me, eyes locked on her tablet, fingers tight around it as if looking up would force her to step in. My name is Vivian Hale. I've been with this company longer than Blake has known how to pronounce our core product line. I run operations. I fix what breaks. I don't chase visibility. I don't raise my voice in meetings. Somehow, that became the problem. Blake waited, not patiently, confidently. He was expecting shock, maybe anger, something that would make this sound like a necessity instead of what it was. I picked up the pen. That's when his expression flickered just for a second. You understand what this means, he said, slower now. This isn't a negotiation, I signed. Paper scratched. The motion felt familiar, steady. I capped the pen and slid it back across the table. No one spoke for a moment. Dana finally looked up. Blake let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You're taking this well, I smiled. Not warm, not friendly. Just enough to make him comfortable. Good, he said, nodding. Then we're aligned. I stood before he could say anything else. There was nothing left to clarify. As I reached the door, his voice followed me lighter now, already moving on. HR will update your access. I didn't turn around. Let me ask you something. If that were you, would you have argued, or would you have signed too? The story you're about to hear is a fictional narrative from RevengeAITA, inspired by real workplace dynamics, especially the moments when silence is mistaken for surrender. By the time I stepped into the hallway, my badge still worked. A few people glanced up, then looked away. News like this travels fast when the goal is to erase someone quietly. I walked back to my desk, logged in, and noticed a calendar invite that had been added overnight. Executive session, scheduled for next week. I wasn't invited. I stayed, I worked, and I let them believe the contract had done its job. I came in the next morning at the same time I always did. No announcement, no escort. No one stopped me at the door. At my desk, the system took longer to load, not frozen, just slower. A permissions notice flashed, then disappeared. I could still see the operations dashboard, but the approval tab was gone. Budgets opened in red only. My name was missing from the final sign-off chain. That's how they do it when they don't want a scene. They don't lock you out. They hollow you out. Blake walked past my row without slowing. He glanced at his watch. You're still early, he said. It sounded like praise. It wasn't. I've always been early, I replied. Already turning back to my screen. He didn't argue. That told me everything. By mid-morning, people learned how to look past me. Conversations dropped when I came close, then picked back up once I moved on. Someone from logistics slid a printout onto my desk without meeting my eyes, waiting for an approval that no longer existed. I'll take it from here, Blake called across the aisle before I could speak. He smiled. Big, public, comfortable. Vivian's role is evolving. No one asked what that meant. They didn't want to. At 11, a calendar alert popped up on my screen. Executive strategy session. I wasn't invited, but I could see the title, the room, the organizer, Blake. I hovered over it long enough to be sure. Then I did nothing. Later that afternoon, I opened a routine process doc. The version history panel expanded by itself. 3 edits, overnight, 1 comment unresolved. Author, Dana Lynn. I scrolled just far enough to read the line before the system locked it again. Reclassify responsibilities pending final board alignment. Across the floor. Dana stood by the copier, phone to her ear, nodding too much. When she noticed me looking, she stopped nodding. The call ended. She walked over, voice low. If you need anything, let me know. I'm good, I said, still doing what I've always done. Her mouth tightened. Right, before leaving for the day, Blake stopped by again. He rested his hand on my partition, casual, claiming space. You're handling this better than I expected, he said. I looked up. I signed. That was all it took. He nodded once and walked away. I stayed logged in after most of the floor cleared out, watching processes update, seeing what still ran through me, and what had been rerouted around me. They took my authority and left my access, Not by accident, by choice. And choices. I knew. Always leave fingerprints. Notice what they didn't do. They didn't fire her again. They just made sure everyone else stopped asking her. The shares didn't come out of nowhere. They were earned, slowly. Back when the company was still renting lab space by the hour, I was the one building schedules so experiments didn't collide. I handled vendors, fixed problems no one wanted to claim, stayed when the excitement wore off and the work got boring. Equity came in pieces, small ones. Over years. You don't care about visibility, the founder told me once, sliding paperwork across a table stained with old coffee. So we'll keep this quiet. Quiet meant trust. Quiet meant my name never showing up on internal dashboards. Quiet meant 47% accumulating without anyone important ever asking who held it. Years later, a junior analyst joked about a ghost owner who never showed up to investor events. I didn't correct him. At the time, I believed contribution mattered more than control. I never used those shares to threaten anyone, never waived them in meetings, never traded them for titles. When Blake took over and started talking about streamlining, I kept my head down and focused on operations, throughput, safety, keeping people employed. Power, to me, meant making sure things didn't break. That belief didn't cost me anything, until it did. Marina Voss met me for coffee after work. No small talk. 47% gives you leverage, she said. Not command. I know. You can't remove a chief executive by yourself, she continued. Not cleanly. I'm not trying to, I said. I'm trying to stop something. She paused, then leaned in slightly. Then you'll need alignment. Proof that forces other people to move. I didn't argue. I'd read the bylaws. I knew the math. 47% wasn't control. It was a pivot point. Marina closed her folder. Most people would be nervous sitting on that much without protection. I thought about the contract Blake pushed in front of me, the way he relaxed when I signed, the access they'd left me on purpose or by mistake. I'm not nervous, I said. I'm patient. She studied me for a second, then nodded. Good. Then we wait while they finish building their case for us. I left knowing exactly what my stake could do, and just as important, what it couldn't, and knowing they still believed it did nothing at all. Here's the mistake they made. They thought silence meant weakness. They didn't realize it meant she was watching. The email didn't come to me. It showed up by accident. The kind that isn't really an accident. Dana was sharing her screen during a routine compliance check. Her cursor paused too long. One folder opened, another closed. Then one subject line stayed on screen just long enough to read before she tried to minimize it. To erase her. The room went quiet. Dana shifted her chair without turning around. That's not finalized, she said too fast. Just internal wording. I didn't say anything. She sighed. You're not supposed to be looped in anymore. Then close it, I said. Or don't. Her hand froze on the mouse. The document opened again. Not all the way. Just enough. Bullet points. Clean. Neutral. No emotion. Forced buyback at adjusted valuation. Reclassification of legacy shares. Removal of attribution from historical filings and internal records. No mention of performance. No cause. Just process. Erasing someone as a checklist. This is about alignment, Dana said quietly. It's not personal. I leaned closer and looked at the footer. Legal had reviewed it. Owen's initials were there, time-stamped after midnight. Aligned with what? I asked, tapping the screen once. A version of the company where I never existed. Her shoulders lifted, then dropped. Blake wants a clean story before the board meeting. Clean for who? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. This is the moment it stops being about a job. This is about erasing a person. That afternoon, Owen came by my desk. He stayed standing. You weren't meant to see that draft. It wasn't hidden very well. That doesn't make it actionable. It makes it intentional. He rubbed his jaw. Vivian. This is about reducing friction. They're rewriting history, I said, and you signed off on it. His eyes flicked toward the glass offices. I reviewed wording, not execution. That's how it always starts. He straightened. If this moves forward, it'll be done quietly. Quiet still counts. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. If you're going to challenge this, be careful. They think you're already gone. I watched him walk away. The document was still open on my screen. They weren't trying to remove me. They were trying to make it look like I had never been there at all. When someone tries to erase you, It's because you're still in the way. Marina Voss didn't ask how I was doing. She opened the bylaws and slid them across the table. Start here, she said, tapping the margin, duty, loyalty, disclosure. I skimmed text I'd read years ago and never thought I'd need like this. This isn't about performance. No, Marina said. That's why they wrapped it in process. I flipped the page, forced buyback, reclassification, removing my name. Her jaw tightened, all without cause, until they invent one. She shook her head once. They didn't invent cause. They created exposure. We worked quietly, no speeches, just circling numbers, underlining verbs, folding pages where case law mattered more than intent. Finally, she looked up. Removal for cause doesn't need a majority stake, she said. It needs proof. Of what? Breach, she said. Lying to shareholders, self-dealing, hiding risk while pretending everything's fine. I slid the memo across the table. To erase her, Marina didn't react. She read it once, then again, slower. This is intent, she said. It hasn't happened yet. It doesn't need to, she replied. Planning falsification and coercion is enough, especially when it lines up with misleading disclosures. I pictured Blake's slides. The rounded numbers, expenses rebranded as strategy. They're rushing, I said, trying to clean the story before the board meets, which means they're leaving fingerprints. I leaned back. If I move now, they cut my access. If you wait too long, Marina said, they control the story. We let that sit. Then she closed the folder. Silence buys time, she said. But only if it looks like surrender. They already think I folded. She nodded. Good, let them finish. Sometimes the smartest move is letting them believe they won. I stood to leave, then stopped. If this happens, I said. It won't be loud. It shouldn't be, Marina replied. Noise gives them something to spin. What does quiet give me? She slid her card across the table. A record, a vote, and an outcome you don't have to ask permission for. I pocketed it, back at the office. Blake was still smiling in the halls, talking about alignment, efficiency. Dana avoided my eyes. Owen stopped by once, then didn't come back. I kept working, I kept listening, I let them keep talking. They thought silence meant compliance. They didn't realize it was evidence. When someone rushes to erase you, let them finish writing the proof. I didn't call Horizon Capital. I sent a calendar invite, no subject line, one attachment. A redacted ops report from 3 quarters ago. Malcolm Reed showed up alone, no small talk, no handshake linger. He put his phone face down, glanced at the file, then slid it back across the table. We've been tracking variance, he said. You just confirmed the direction. Tracking how? I asked. Delayed filings. Cost drifting while revenue projections climb. He didn't blink. Someone's polishing numbers instead of fixing problems. I nodded. That's been my concern. He leaned back slightly. You didn't call when leadership changed. I wanted to see what actually changed. And process stayed, I said. Accountability didn't. He considered that. We don't do spectacle. I'm not offering one. Good, he said. Because we don't remove executives over personality conflicts. I slid another page across the table, reclassified expenses. The same vendors popping up in places they didn't belong. Malcolm's jaw tightened. This wasn't disclosed. No, and this. He tapped the margin. Draft language, I said. Not final. Yet. He looked up. Intent matters. It does, I said. When it's paired with concealment. The room went quiet, not awkward, focused. Malcolm closed the folder. We suspected misalignment. We didn't have proof. I'm building it, I said, carefully. He studied me. You're not asking us to lead. I don't need you to. What do you need? When the vote comes, I said. I need you to recognize breach when it's presented. Nothing else. He exhaled slowly. If this holds, we'll support removal for cause. Support, I repeated. Not negotiate. Correct. I stood. Then I'll deliver exactly what qualifies. As we parted, he paused. One question. Yes, why wait? Because they're still adding to the record, I said. And every move they make helps me. Notice this. She's not gathering allies. She's confirming witnesses. Back at the office, Blake's voice carried down the hallway, confident. Loud enough to sound sure. Dana followed 2 steps behind, nodding on cue. Everything still looked normal. I sat down, logged in, and opened the shared drive they thought I'd stopped paying attention to. The board session was 3 days away. They were still writing their story. They just didn't realize who was collecting the footnotes. Sometimes the people who matter most were already watching. The meeting started without me. Blake was already mid-sentence at the head of the table, clicking through slides like he'd rehearsed this part. "What we're proposing," he said, steady, practiced, "is a necessary realignment, leaner structure, clear accountability." A few people nodded. Others stared at the screen, waiting to see where the numbers landed before reacting. I walked in as he moved to the next slide. No announcement, no one said my name. A few chairs shifted. Someone stopped typing. The door closed behind me, not loud but loud enough. Blake's voice faltered for half a second. "Vivian," he said, then corrected himself. "This is a closed session." Marina Voss stepped past him and placed a thin folder in the center of the table. "So is governance," she said, calm, even. "And this session qualifies." She didn't ask to speak. She didn't wait for approval. She opened the folder and slid 1 page forward. "For the record," she said, "Vivian Hale holds 47% of the company's voting shares through a registered trust. Those shares are present and represented." The room reacted, then caught itself. Blake looked toward Owen. Owen didn't look back. Marina tapped the slides still glowing on the screen. "This agenda item affects shareholder rights. That requires disclosure. And a vote." Blake smiled, tight around the edges. "With respect, this is procedural." "It is," Marina said. "Which is why procedure applies." I pulled out a chair and sat down. I didn't ask. No one stopped me. Blake tried again. "Vivian accepted revised terms. That's documented." "It is," Marina replied. "So is the intent to reclassify equity without cause." Someone near the far end cleared their throat. "That wasn't disclosed." Another leaned forward. "Neither was a forced buyback." Blake's smile thinned. "Those were drafts." "Drafts reviewed by legal," Marina said, sliding a second page forward, and circulated internally. No one spoke. Malcolm Reed broke the silence. "We should pause the presentation." Blake opened his mouth, then closed it. Marina gathered the papers neatly. "We'll continue once the room is ready to address governance." I met Blake's eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked confused, like he was searching for a title that used to protect him and realizing it wasn't there. The meeting didn't continue. It reset. This is the moment power changes hands. Not with shouting, with paperwork, timing, and a seat she never gave up. Marina stood up again. This time, she didn't open a folder. "Before any vote on restructuring," she said, "there's one document that needs to be entered into the record." No one objected. No one rushed her. The screen changed. 1 page. No formatting tricks. No emphasis. Just a subject line, sitting there plain and exposed. "To erase her?" Someone leaned closer to read it properly. "That's internal language," a board member said. "It is," Marina replied. "And it lays out a plan to force a buyback, reclassify voting rights, and remove attribution from official records." Blake let out a quick laugh. Sharp, defensive. Drafts aren't actions. Malcolm Reed didn't even turn his head. Intent combined with concealment is action. I clicked to the next page. Invoices, dates, numbers lining up a little too well. "These expenses were disclosed as outreach," I said. "They paid for messaging while operations took the cuts." Owen shifted in his seat. "Those allocations were approved. They were reclassified," Marina said. "After the spending happened," a quieter voice from the table. "Why wasn't this disclosed to shareholders?" Blake opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His hands pressed flat against the table, then curled. I slid 1 last page forward. "This email went out after my contract was signed. It references accelerated timelines before today's board session." Malcolm nodded once. "That's material." The room went still, not confused, not shocked. "Aware. The threshold for removal for cause has been met," Malcolm said. "Breach of fiduciary duty, misrepresentation, coercive governance." Blake pushed his chair back. "This is an ambush. It's a record," Marina said. "The vote happened without drama. Names read, answers given. No speeches, unanimous." Blake stood, his face drained of whatever confidence he'd walked in with. "You'll regret access is revoked," Owen cut in. Flat, immediate, effective now. Security appeared at the door, calm, no rush, no hands raised, no severance. The chair added, "No transition." Blake looked at me then, not angry, not threatening, looking for something to negotiate with. There was nothing left. I gathered my papers. The screen went dark. The agenda closed. The company didn't explode. It corrected. And that's when I learned the truth. Revenge doesn't need volume. It needs timing, proof, and a room that finally has to listen. Notice how nobody shouted. Nobody slammed a table. This is what real consequences sound like: quiet, final, and impossible to argue with. The termination notice went out before noon. No qualifiers, no effective at a later date. Just one line ending Blake Rourke's authority, and another suspending his access pending review. Owen stopped by my desk once. He didn't sit. Regulatory counsel has been notified, he said. The disclosures will trigger an external audit. I nodded. They should. Media's asking for comment. Then tell them there isn't one. He hesitated. They'll fill the silence. They always do. By the end of the week, Blake's name started disappearing. First from internal filings, then from the website, then from the investor deck. A former colleague sent me a screenshot, a conference agenda, his keynote slot replaced with a blank line. Another message followed, short, uncomfortable. Background checks are being reopened. Dana passed me in the hall. Her eyes were red. She slowed, then stopped. I didn't think it would go this far. It went exactly where it was aimed. I said, just not by you. She swallowed. He wants to speak to you. No. The relief in her shoulders came before she realized she'd shown it. That afternoon, Horizon Capital released a statement. Malcolm's voice came through the speakerphone, neutral to the point of indifference. We support the board's decision and the steps taken to restore governance. No names, no drama, no explanation beyond what the record already showed. Operations didn't stall. Budgets reverted. Approvals reappeared. Systems corrected themselves like they'd been waiting. A junior manager leaned into my doorway, careful. Are we clear to proceed? Yes, I said. Document everything. By Friday. Blake's severance clause was officially voided. No payout, no advisory role, no quiet exit. The review widened. Vendor contracts, reclassified expenses. Emails started surfacing on their own, no longer needing help. A reporter left 3 messages. I didn't return them. Marina called once. Late? It's done. She said. It started. I replied. She smiled through the line. You kept it clean. I kept it accurate. That night, I shut my laptop and didn't reopen it. The company didn't need a statement from me to understand what had happened. It needed proof that accountability had weight, and it had just learned how heavy it was. Notice what didn't happen. No apology tour, no redemption speech. Because when consequences are real, words stop mattering. The paperwork came back clean. Marina laid it on the table without ceremony. Partial divestment, she said. Governance conditions are locked in. These don't get renegotiated later. I read it once, then again. Oversight restructured. Independent compliance made permanent. Audit triggers hard-coded. Any attempt to dilute voting power now required disclosure and a supermajority. This wasn't protection for me. It was friction for anyone who tried this again. Malcolm joined the call briefly. Horizon accepts the terms, he said. This stabilizes the company. It stabilizes behavior, I replied. He paused. You're not taking the chief executive role. No. Some people will read that as hesitation. They can, I said. I'm not here for a chair. I'm here for control. The board ratified the changes that afternoon. No speeches, no congratulations. The vote was recorded and moved on. Later, Owen stopped by my desk with a thin folder. Your access is fully restored. I don't need all of it, I said. Route final approvals through operations. Keep compliance independent. He nodded, relieved. Understood. Dana lingered by the door after hours. I wanted to say I raised a hand. Do the job. That's enough. She did. When the sale closed, I signed once more. Same pen, same name, different outcome. I kept enough stake to enforce the rules I'd written into the future. I released the rest to partners who had no interest in shortcuts. There was no interview, no announcement with my face on it. The company didn't need a hero. It needed limits. I packed my bag and shut off the lights without ceremony. The systems would keep running. That was the point. I didn't win by being louder. I didn't win by humiliating anyone. I won by making sure the next person couldn't be erased as easily. If someone forces you to choose quickly, it's usually because time is the only thing they don't control. Don't rush to survive a bad deal. Pause long enough to protect yourself. Sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting back. It's signing calmly and making sure they never get to undo it.